What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome, and if you guys are coming back, I appreciate y'all. So either way, let's get into this video about the Slammer, supposedly coming from the hardest Nightfall ever, which in my personal opinion, not the hardest. OG Corrupted was absolutely terrible when we first got into it. We can blow through this not too shabby, about 15-20 minutes depending on your squad, but we are getting the Slammer, which is a nice heavy sword that comes from the Nightfalls. That is a stasis burn, so it is a little interesting thing that we got for y'all with this build. So starting us off, this Vortex frame has two origin perks like our Nightfall weapons do with Vanguard's Vindication. Those final blows grant us a small amount of health, as well as stunning recovery. Stunning a champion partially refills your magazine, triggers some health regen, as well as improves the recovery for a short duration. So I personally run stunning recovery 95% of the time because a lot of things we go into, at least at this point, have champions, even the Echo battlegrounds that we got, and the health is such a little baby bit that it really doesn't affect me for Vanguard's Vindication. Now for masterwork with this thing, we only got one option for impact, so that's what you're gonna get, and you better like it, Bungie said. As for blades, we got the jagged edge right here is what I would go with for that damage for PvE. We got ourselves that +4 to impact, so definitely what we're building it out for to do the most damage. We're almost at 70 for impact on this bad boy. Now you guys will have to let me know what you guys do for guards. I personally go with heavy guard. In a lot of mine, gives us high in that defense, a little lower in the charge rate. Not too big of a deal in my personal opinion, even though it does give us -10 and we're only at 10 for the charge rate overall. But having that resistance and endurance up at what it is at 70 and 60 does feel good, because I do feel like I block a lot in some of that end game content, just 1 or 2 attacks to keep me alive in some of that GM raid activity. So I like heavy guard personally. Now, as Anakin might say, this is where the fun begins. We got chain reaction in the third column for a good old big stasis explosion that we can get with this when we get those defeats. You can read the community research right there, but a very good combination with that stasis synergy, as well as just the add clear potential, if you will, of this, besides the damage potential that we have on top of it as well. Now Relentless right here is more for that damage side, so landing those 3 light attacks within a short period of time gives us a little bit of ammo back, so a good little bit to keep up that DPS for a longer rotation time. So Relentless strikes for the damage, and then chain reaction for that add clear side of things. Now again, I don't know if you guys like this perk, but I do kind of on this weapon. Pugilist gives us our melee energy back when we get those defeats, and when we deal melee damage gives us better weapon handling, so not a bad perk in my personal opinion. Feels a little bit better on something like a shotgun that has like 1-2 punch with this, so it's kind of internally feeding back on itself, because you do have to switch off of your sword to use your melee. But on good builds like something with a contact cannon titan, whatever it may be, not a bad option as well if you want to spam your melee. Now moving on to the fourth column, got some good perks as well. We got 3 of them in my opinion. Cold Steel, pair this with that chain reaction for a beautiful synergy of stasis. When we get those powered sword hits, it slows targets, so we can actually freeze targets with this as well. So stun a bunch of champions, overload as well as those unstoppables just with the Cold Steel perk. Only one other sword had that, with the Zypher from our nice winter festival that we have every year. So a good little perk in my personal opinion. If you could get something like Cold Steel with that chain reaction, it is an add clear machine, and stasis synergy is S tier. Second option right here is Demo, just kind of like Pugilist, not the craziest perk on this sword, but when you get those defeats, you are able to get your grenade energy back. So if you want some ability spam, you could go with Pugilist with Demo, but again, it's nothing crazy, because when you are throwing grenades, you aren't reloading a sword like you are other weapons, so you're kind of losing half of the perk. But again, if you're using grenades to weaken, not a bad option to get that little extra DPS, because weakening is super good. Everybody else using those void weapons gonna get an even bigger buff if they're using that expanding abyss, so not a bad option as well. My number 1 choice is for sure that Relentless strikes in the third column with bait and switch, so dealing damage with all equipped weapons in a short time gives us that nice juicy 30% boost for a good 10 seconds, and it absolutely absolutely eats, in my opinion, with that vortex frame, especially when we got the stasis burn going on. Stasis surges, this thing will eat those enemies' health bars, absolutely just destroy them. GMs, those champions stand no chance. So in my opinion, very, very good option. I was using this on that Herald of Finality inside of the raid, so it is a pretty good sword, especially with that bait and switch perk for that DPS side of things. But you got cold steel chain reaction to back it up for the ad clear side of things. So personally, I'm giving it just like a 4-4, 4-5, pretty middle of the lane for swords that we have, if you will. Lots of good things that we have on swords recently as well, with double damage perks, but this thing does fall in that nice A tier in my personal opinion, so that's what I'm throwing it at. Let me know what you guys think about it. PvP, we do got some good options as well. All right, now on to PvP. Obviously, we got impact again for our masterwork, and I personally go with jagged edge again for our blade because we're not getting the full ammo capacity anyways, unless you're cheating or somehow just hoarding your heavy until the last couple seconds of the round. So that extra little bit of damage helps for situations in their super, in wells, stuff like that, where it's a little bit harder to defeat them. So that's why I went with jagged edge. Now, flip side for the guard, I think burst guard is the best option for me, at least. It takes the most damage reduction away, even though it won't last nearly as long because our guard endurance goes down to 0, but having that resistance just for a quick little burst of guarding so you can get up nice and close and personal with this sword and get that defeat, definitely think it's the way to go over our other options for guard. Now, number one choice for me is the eager edge. Swords that don't have this in the Crucible definitely feel very slow and lacking, in my opinion. You can use this to rip towards those enemies and then vortex frame on them and get a bunch of defeats, but eager edge is definitely the number one choice right here for the PvP realm, with chain reaction probably being number 2. The reason I say that this is our number 2 choice with that nice elemental explosion is just because it's stasis, so good little elemental explosion that we get with that stasis burn on people, so not a bad option. You can spread it to a bunch of different people and get some defeats with it, so not too shabby, but eager edge definitely is our number 1 choice. Now, kind of the same thing in the 4th column. I really think that this is our only perk that feels the best, in my opinion, is that cold steel, because if you do hit somebody and happen to not defeat them for whatever reason, you're gonna get that nice slow to stack on them, or whatever it may be. People in a bubble, people in a well, you can use this cold steel to slow and then freeze them if you get enough hits off, so not too shabby. Definitely the go-to perk in the 4th column for me, at least for the Crucible. But again, I don't think there's really anything else besides maybe demo if you're trying to get a bunch of defeats with it to get your grenade back, but unless you're hoarding heavy, again, I don't think it's worth it for that. So cold steel with either eager edge as my number 1 or chain reaction would be a good option too, but nothing too crazy again about this sword, just like other ones that have eager edge, stuff like that. Vorpal eager edge is probably a better option for a lot of swords, so I'm going to give this thing probably a 3-5, 3-7 inside of the PvP realm. Nothing too crazy about it. Again, I like it better inside of the PvE realm. A lot of weapons seem to fall in that category lately. Instead of being one or the other, they just seem to be leaning pretty hard into the PvE realm. So you'll have to let me know what you guys think about that. But again, appreciate all that support lately. Y'all have been killing it. I appreciate all the new faces as well coming into the channel, so don't be afraid to keep on hitting that bell and like and subscribe button. Helps me out, helps the channel out. Plus, you'll get all those notifications to the videos here for these god rolls, as well as the builds that we put on the channel. So appreciate you guys again. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.